In this update, I've got the latest information on big changes as the next weather pattern is building into this week ahead, and I have to look at what that could mean for you in terms of temperatures and precipitation. In addition to that, of course, the return of bigger storm systems will come eventually, and I have a look ahead to when the next larger scale system may be on the way. Before we talk about if anything's going to fall from the sky or how it's going to feel outside as we go into the week ahead, I'd love for you to answer my question of the day down below. Are you ready for spring, or do you want more chances for ice and snow as we push into the end of February and early March? Tell me why and what state you're in down below, as well as make sure you're hitting that subscribe button down below if you haven't already, as I'm almost to 10,000 subscribers. With all that being said, let's go ahead and jump over here looking at this pattern graphic showing what's going to be going on in the atmosphere and the mid-levels as we go into the week ahead. This looks 15 to 20,000 feet into the atmosphere, showing areas where we're going to be having ridging. That's indicated by the oranges and reds, where the jet stream is expected to be pushed further north in comparison to averages, allowing for some warmer than average air. Blues are where we're going to be seeing pieces of jet stream energy and usually some lower pressures. That's where we tend to see a cooler than average air, and a different color in comparison to what we've seen through a lot of this winter is going to be filling the screen as we go into the first couple days of the week ahead. A lot of the country, from especially the central into the western parts of the country, looking at this flow of these yellows and oranges building up, and this indicates where we're going to be looking at warmer than average air as the jet stream gets pushed north, again ridging, allowing for some temperatures to get 10, 15, 20, 25 degrees above normal. That's going to be a trend for most of the week in these zones. Yes, we'll see a little bit of cooler than average air in Florida due to a system to begin this week. We'll see some pieces of energy riding through the northern U.S. in clipper-like fashion, but overall, it's going to be a drier week in many zones with places warming up due to that ridging moving through. I do want to mention the fact that some of this will even impact the eastern U.S., especially as we go through the first few days of the week, but we will see a little bit of a change for especially the eastern U.S. as we go out of Wednesday into Thursday and Friday, though, as we are going to see a stronger storm system expected to move out of parts of especially the Great Lakes and Midwest region, and then become a little bit feistier with at least some rain and maybe some interior northeast snow as it moves east. That dip in the jet stream that comes in, especially behind that system, going to mean for an anomalous trough where we're going to see some briefly below average air to finish this week. Continuing with the ridging, though, and that's going to be the main trend into the western and central U.S. especially. The further south you go through these areas highlighted in the yellows and oranges and reds back out into the western half of the country at least, expecting temperatures to be above average, and many spots getting up into the 60s and 70s as we push through this week, even on up into some parts of the north central plains at times. And that general trend looks to continue to try and rebound back to the east maybe by the time we get into the first couple days of March, although we might have to get through a little bit more of that jet stream dipping in the east before that can occur. Before we talk about some of those weather systems we're anticipating to bring rain and snow into the week ahead, let's talk a little bit more about those specific temperatures anticipated, especially for the next few days here by looking at the National Digital Forecast Database. And what you notice as we go into tomorrow morning, into our Monday, February 24th of 2025, is the uniform nature of a lot of these temperatures across the country. From Nevada to the Dakotas back down to Texas, a lot of spots in the 20s and 30s, and 20s and 30s this far north in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas into Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. Pretty far above usual for this time of the year. In fact, in some cases by 10, 15, 20 plus degrees above usual. And that's going to mean we're going to be near record warm lows up here. We should be well below freezing in a lot of these zones, even into late February in the morning. We've got plenty of 20s over into the eastern U.S. That's a little bit closer to average, or even a little bit below normal up there into the interior northeast. But even up in the interior northeast, warming above freezing. We've got 30s and 40s anticipated here as we jump into our Monday afternoon. And look at how far north the warmth is pushing out into the west. California, a lot of Nevada, the valleys there in southern and south central parts of Utah. We've got a lot of Arizona and New Mexico getting through the 60s. And the closer you go back down there towards that Mexico border, we've got 70s and 80s. What about on out here into the central U.S. as far north as the South Dakota and North Dakota border, looking at temperatures getting near 55 to 60 with a broad area of 60s and low to mid and even upper 70s as you get out of places like Kansas and Missouri, and then back down into parts of Oklahoma, western Arkansas, western Louisiana, and into Texas, through a lot of the southeast U.S., closer to average, as we've got a little bit of some cooler air in some of these zones, but still 50s and 60s, near to a little bit above normal, especially as you get on up there into the Ohio Valley. What about into Tuesday? More of the same. We've got 20s and 30s for a lot of the country. And yes, we've got 30s as far south here as Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee. Pretty normal, or even a little bit above normal for this time of the year. These 20s still around to above normal as you get on up into the north central plains. What about Tuesday afternoon? Looking warm for a lot more zones. And I do want to point out the fact that it isn't going to be a cold week here in the east, even though we're going to be a little bit closer to average than, say, 65 to 70 is on up here into the Dakotas, Nebraska, and Kansas. 65 to 70, still a little bit above normal, and it's going to gradually get a little bit further above normal towards Wednesday and Thursday before we see that cool down out of Thursday into Friday here into some parts of especially the southeast and mid-Atlantic regions of the U.S. Just to kind of show you how that happens, look at this. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you could definitely see how especially the west remaining on that warmer side even as we go towards the end of the week. There's that little dip in the jet stream that's especially going to cool down the northeastern quadrant of the U.S. to finish the upcoming week. Here we are now, we're pivoting over to the future radar map here with our European model as we're going to take a look at some of the systems leading to some of those little shifts in the temperatures as we're going to be moving through the week ahead. As we push overnight tonight out of our Sunday night and into our Monday morning, the main trend that we're going to watch as we go through Monday morning and throughout the day, watching some rain shifting down here along the immediate Gulf Coast and then down into some parts of Florida, where temperatures are going to be around to below average for this time of the year as a result of that energy moving through. That's going to be out of here for the most part by the time we get through Tuesday. A little bit active Monday into Tuesday. We'll see some energy. You'll notice it with some rain and mountain snow moving through some parts of the Pacific Northwest and the Mountain West, particularly into the Mountain West regions of Montana, Wyoming, and then into the Dakotas. But overall, unless you're up there in the highest elevations, this is all falling as some light to moderate rain, and that's going to continue to be the trend in some of these zones as we watch just some generally light precip moving through the far northwestern quadrant of the country as we go out of Monday into Tuesday. Dry all the way down here as you get down into the southwest, the Four Corners, the south central, the southeast, you name it. Most of these zones warming up again 60s, 70s, not uncommon through most of these zones as we get through at least the beginning portion of this week. A little bit of light rain into some parts of Pennsylvania, New York, and Vermont with a little piece of energy moving through on Tuesday. We could see some higher elevation snow as a result of that, but again, nothing to write home about. The only system of some more notable value into changing the weather a little bit is this one. This is that one that's going to bring especially that cool down into the east as we finish this week. European model begins painting it moving through the Midwest and the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley with very light rain for most zones, a cold rain at that in some spots, especially into Wisconsin and Michigan where we could see snow mix in as we get to the end of our Wednesday. Some of this could extend back down with maybe even a rumble of thunder as you get back towards the mid-Mississippi Valley, maybe as far back down to the south as the mid-south. But overall, the biggest impacts out of this are going to become as the low pressure tightens up a little bit into the northeast as we go out of Wednesday into Thursday. We'll see some rain as we've got a southerly flow pushing up some warmth that could allow for some thunder even into some parts of the southeast and mid-Atlantic as this moves through out of Wednesday night through our Thursday. We could see snow on up there into the far interior northeast, including Maine. But overall, even with this wraparound precip coming back with the northwest flow around the Great Lakes, looking at mostly rain out of this system, even in that wraparound. By the time we get into our Friday morning, maybe some light snow coming around the Great Lakes and into some parts of those usual spots in the Appalachians that get some snow banking up against them. Overall, by the time we get to our Friday, a little cooler here in the east, but most zones drying out, and in fact, again, a lot of the country dry as we go through this week and even as we get towards Friday. Since we talked about the areas that are going to see rain, let's talk about the total precipitation. We're not even going to worry about the areas that see snow, but keep in mind, some of you there in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, those highest elevations, will get some pretty heavy snowfall, and even down there into the Washington and Oregon coast, we could watch for some brief flooding out of that mostly moderate rain that we're going to see, and those quick rain totals that could add up as we get through the first couple days of this week. Once some of that energy moves east, we see it get past the plains, bringing nothing there, and we only see a quarter to a half an inch of rain over here into some parts of the Ohio Valley in the eastern U.S. This is the biggest rain of the week coming Wednesday into Thursday, and it's only bringing that amount. So that shows how quiet we are out here across the country. By the way, Florida's Monday rain bringing about an inch. That's more than most in the eastern half of the country can say for the entire week. Now that we've talked about near-term increments of precipitation, let's use this blended guidance to look at 24-hour increments of where precipitation confidence is the highest as we go beyond the very end of February and into the first several days of March. This is, again, blended guidance, so especially where you see those greens and blues, that's where there's higher confidence in heavier amounts of precipitation. As we go into the upcoming weekend, most zones, especially through the central and west central parts of the country, remaining generally dry. We might start to see some action, especially into the Pacific Northwest, into the south central zones, starting to get some action as we go maybe out of March 1st into March 2nd, March 3rd. But look at what happens as we go out of March 4th into March 5th. European ensembles picking up on a pretty big signal, and the GFS model and ensembles have been doing the same, beginning somewhere around the Central Plains, then moving into the Mississippi Valley around, again, that 4th and 5th time frame. This is not a specific system or anything that a given model has honed in on yet, but this looks like a signal for more active weather beginning to return, and with warmer than average air in place into a lot of zones, even pushing further east by this time, this could mean for not necessarily a winter storm event for many spots, although it could on the far northern extremes. It could mean some severe weather gets going, especially into the mid-Mississippi Valley and the lower Mississippi Valley. We're heading towards March, and that's when we start seeing these warm-ups leading to severe weather events. That's something we'd have to track, with at least rain looking pretty likely if this signal continues to hold into areas further east as we go out of the 5th towards the 6th and the 7th. So it really looks like an active setup then, and then we could even see more additional areas of rainfall as we go deeper into March, but that's a story for another time. Just wanted to show you that longer range signal and that we definitely have active weather not too far away on the horizon. With that being said, of course, if you have any comments and questions about this video, and of course if you want to answer that question of the day that I gave you at the start of the video, make sure you're dropping all of that right down below in the comments section. Also, if you have not already hit that button and you want consistent, accurate, and educational forecasts in the future, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button right down below. Oh, and one last reminder, I always use these weather bell model maps in my videos. Check their link out right down below in the description of the video. Alright, I'll see you next time.
One Nation Weather.